Good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing? Doing good? Okay, how's your weekend going so far? Saturday. How did it go? Good? Anything interesting worth highlighting? Okay. Yes, Jen?
I met one of the other classmates.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Ruben? Yeah.
They asked him for help with the lab, and we worked on it.
Nice. I'm really glad. Yeah, Ben is good. He works out in New Jersey. He works for the company, I think, that does the Times Square. No, not Times Square. Dow Jones. They do the New York Times. Dow Jones. So cool. I'm glad that you met him. Okay, so today we're going to let's get a review on the events lab. I saw some of you have completed it, some of you haven't. Let's look at it here. No, events lab. I think like about half of the classroom has completed it. 17 people, or at least we have 17 pull requests. And I wanted to just like review it since we realized that some of you were confused on like where to use the event.prevent default, and as well as to how to listen in a form for a submit event, and also like sort of clarifying a few things about the submit event. So that's what we're going to do in the first, let's say, 45 minutes to an hour, going over the lab. After that, we're going to get into CSS on how we can start styling our websites a little bit better. Cool. Any questions before we start? Okay, let's go to, let me see the lab. Let's close this. Cool. So I'm going to clone this, I guess. So I have my events lab folder, and here, so let's read what it says over here. We have to basically do a to-do list app, where our app will have a header with my to-dos, a single URL that starts empty, and a form for the user to type in a new to-do, and then once you hit submit, that to-do will be added to the list, right? And then, so these are some of the functionalities. When the user writes something in the form, text input. When the user writes something in the form and clicks submit, the URL should update with a new li item at the bottom of the list. The page should not refresh. And I let some hints over here to sort of break down that bullet point into more manageable steps. I hope some of you found this useful. Then when the user writes nothing in the form, the text input area, when they type nothing in the form and they hit submit, an error message should appear inside a p tag that says, you could say error, please specify a to-do, or you could say any other message that you specify, as long as you let the user know that they should have put a to-do, or they should have not let the input empty. Then the third bullet point, when the user clicks on one of the li items, the item should be crossed out, indicating that the to-do is complete. And I also left this hint here as to what you needed to look for getting that crossed out effect. And also I put this small GIF here that demonstrates basically what our MVP, minimal viable product, will look like. So, any questions here so far? Okay, so let's get to do this. So, what should be the first thing that I need to do? for starting to create this website. Do this.
Build 2 files.
2 files, I like that idea. Maybe, what kind of files?
HTML and JavaScript.
Okay, maybe I'm going to call it to do HTML. And to do .javascript. Cool, let's open this with code. Let me disable something here. Okay, I have 2 files. Oops. No. So I have my 2 files, HTML and JavaScript. What next? Somebody else? What do you know?
With the HTML, with the content, and with the HTML and head body.
HTML, and then a head. And we want to also put a title. It's called my to-do app. Okay. Title. And then a body. What should I put inside the body? What does the instruction say? Let's open the instructions here. Also, if you're using VS Code, it's cool that if you had a markdown file like this, you can right-click on the tab and click Open Preview. That shows you like the nicer looking, or basically the markdown file interpreted. Is much more easier to look at than this one. So what I oftentimes do is I'll put the instructions like on this side, if that is possible. So if not, then we have this here. In here? Okay. The little one? This one? Oh, nice. So yes, there is that button there. You all see it? This button, if you're in a markdown file, look at how this button appears only when you're in a markdown file. Here on HTML, the button disappears. On a markdown file, that appears, and it opens it up on the right. So this is just how it will look on GitHub. And this is good for like when you're writing your READMEs for your projects, so that you get a live preview of what it's going to look like once it's on GitHub. So this is something I like to do always. Open the preview, and then on the right, and then on the left, I do my code. So, okay, the to-do app says that it should have an H1, it should have an URL, and it should have a form. Let's do those. H1, my to-dos. Oops. It should have a URL that is initially empty, and it should have a form. Great. Questions here so far on what we have? This list looks familiar to all of you. Great. So we have the URL, we have the form. According to this, do we have everything? Am I missing something? Yes, it was.
Down the line, I mean, for now, it's fine, but it eventually asks for a tag above the list for alerts.
Okay, yes. Maybe we can put that once we get there. But other than this, am I missing something? Yes, Hugo. Text input and the submit. text input can be just input, and I'm going to specify text. All text inputs by default are text, so you could skip this type in here. Input, okay. Okay. And the other thing was, yeah. Nice. So we also need a script tag here with a source attribute. And this is going to point, this source attribute is our JavaScript file. So we want to do, I always prefer to do /todos.js. For now, you could skip the /. That's going to matter more or later down the line. Also, I think, should we put a type? This has a type. No? There's also a way in which we need to specify, well, we don't need to, but it is good practice to specify what kind of script is this. Does anyone remember where I said this is a JavaScript script? I don't remember if it was type or if it was. Let's look it up. Yeah, this is always good to include because, well, the only programming language that I know will run in a web browser is JavaScript, but that might change, right? That might change, and then maybe we get another scripting language that we could put in the browser, and then we'll need to specify what kind of script our script is. So I'm going to include that, just because it's good practice. Type text /JavaScript. And then I close that. Okay, the last thing that I'm missing here is a submit button. So for submit buttons, you have two options. You have one, the button tag. This creates a button with the tag submit inside, I think. Let's also look at this in the browser. Reveal on Finder, to-dos. Right. So that creates this submit button. So remember that for submit buttons you have two options: the button, and also let me show you this one. The input type submit, and you have to specify the value that you want inside. So let's look at the page now. You see how these two produce the same result: the button and the input type submit with value submit. They produce the same result. Which one you pick is up to you. I feel like I am inclined to just the input type submit more than the button, but they will work the same. Also, while we're here, so let me comment that. Note that the good thing about having an input type submit or just a submit button in the form is that when you type something and you hit enter, the form submits. That is a really good user feature where you type something and you hit enter and the form submit. That's always a good experience. If I have to if I have to come here and click submit, that will be an okay experience. But if I can submit with the enter, that's better. So we're gonna see how we can, because I saw some of you put an event listener on the submit button that listens for the click. That will work if I click the button and it will submit the form, but it might not submit it with enter, which is just a nice to have. Like, imagine if you go to Google and you have to type, if you type something here, and you had to type another button to be able to search. That wouldn't be that much of a good experience. You could just hit enter and submit. Any question on that end? So remember, you have two options for the submit button. Let's see if so we saw that the button works even if I type enter. Now let me show you the other one, the input type submit. Refresh. Now I have the input type submit. And it also works. Cool. Okay, what's next? What do we think is next? Okay, let me call some of you at random. Because the script tag is in the head and it will load too fast, and we need to wait until the DOM content has been loaded. So what's the name of the event that I have to put in here? Love it. Content loaded. What's the second argument to any add event listener? Douglas?
It's a function where it's listening for the event.
A function that will be fired once the event happens. Here I'm going to do an ES6 anonymous arrow function. Right? Okay. So I have this script that will wait for the DOM to be loaded. So we should see this console log happening. As we refresh the page, we see the DOM has loaded. Great. Okay. What's next? Let's have my computer pick something.
Char.
Oh, Char is not here.
Douglas.
What do we do next?
Do we need to give IDs to our two inputs to make it easier to round one again? We have two inputs rather than an input and one?
Oh, that's a good observation. We have, so Douglas' observation is we had two inputs, and maybe you were grabbing the input by saying document.querySelector quotes input, right? It will grab the first input that it finds. And now, if we have two, what do we remember about querySelector? Which one, if you have more than one, what will querySelector give you? The first one, right? So that will still work if we use querySelector with just input. I feel like it's better the approach that Douglas suggested, which is let's give it an ID to grab it uniquely, because if at some point, let's say if at some point I want to move this input text below the button for some reason, save that. If for some reason we have it like this, then if we use querySelector just input, we're gonna get the button. We won't get the text input. We're going to get the button and not the text input if we just decided to alter the order here. So it's better if we just say ID to this. I'm going to call it to do input. So let's put this back up. Let's remove this. Okay, so here, so should we grab the input then? Since that seemed like the next logical step, let's call it let input, or let's call it to do input equal document dot query selector. And if I want to grab by ID, what do I need in the quotes? Hashtag to do input. That's the ID that I gave my input. Okay. What if we console log the to do input here? Just to make sure that we have the correct element. Cool. We have our input here. Any questions here so far? Cool. So we grab the input here. Let's see somebody else.
Ariel.
She's not here.
Alessandra.
Alessandra. What should the next step in doing this to do app be? Creating a list element. Okay. Before we do that, how do we know, like when do we know we need to create a list element? Correct. So we were going to need to grab the form and add an event listener. So this is really important. What Alessandra just mentioned, like a question that you want to ask yourself very often is, when do I want to do something in the website? And in this case, we were discussing about creating the LI element, and we realized that when do we want to create the LI element is after they have submitted the form, not before. Or basically at the exact moment when they submit the form, that's when we want to create the LI element. Not before, not after. So it's good that you are asking yourself those questions, like when should this happen? And then oftentimes the answer to that question is going to be a kind of event added to any element in the DOM. So as Alessandro suggested, let's grab the form. Let form equal document dot query selector. I'm just going to grab it by the tag name. And then let's console log the form just to make sure that we actually grabbed it. Form. Now we see the form down here. Okay, so we actually have the form. How do we add an event listener to the form, and what kind of event do we want to listen for?
Malik.
Malik is not here.
Jonathan.
Jonathan is not
Bryony.
here. Brian is not here.
Chris.
Chris.
Johan.
Johan already participated, so let's do Hugo that has his hand raised. Correct. So we want to listen for the submit event in the form element. The submit event is when you type something and then you submit. You see how the page refreshes and there is that small flicker that you see, and the input text gets cleared. The browser is trying to submit your information to a web server, which we don't have yet. And this is oftentimes something we don't want. We don't want to refresh the page. We want to have more control over the submit event and what's going to happen after it. So this, when a user types in anything and hits enter or hits send, the user is firing the submit event in the form, and that event will try to send the form to a web server. So let's do form.add event listener. We want to listen for the submit event. Note here that we are not listening on the button, we're not listening on a paragraph, we're not listening on the body, we are listening in the form. Listening for submit events only makes sense in the form because forms are the only element that you can submit, basically. So this is really important to listen for it in the form. If you try to listen for submit in the button doesn't have a sort of a submit event. Therefore, the button will probably not work. So let's see. Actually, let's try this. Let's try that for a second. Let's grab the button. Document.query selector. So I'll need to grab the input of type submit. So I'm gonna give this an ID. I just wanted to remind you that there is the selector that I pass into query selector. There are multiple ways of grabbing elements from the DOM. There is the ID, the class, the tag name, and I could even grab this input without adding an ID. I could grab it because it has this unique property called type submit. So I could even grab an element from the DOM if I say I want an input that is of type submit. But for now, I'm going to add an ID. So I'm going to call this button. So pre-selector button. Yes.
On your first left button, you're using that instead of an end.
Thank you. Did I put it here?
No.
Nice. Okay, so let's console log the button. Now that's my second console log. Let's comment this. I'm refreshing with Command R, and then I see the button. What if I don't want the console log to show me the HTML representation? I want the object to inspect its properties. Karen? Great. PIR, and I have my button with all its properties. Okay, so I just wanted to show you what happens if we try to do button that add event listener, submit, and let's do console.log trying to submit the button. So this is just to demonstrate that if we try to submit the button, the submit event doesn't get fired on buttons. So if you listen for the submit event on a button like this, this function will never get fired because there is never a submit event being generated in the button. The button events that generate in buttons are clicks, for instance, hovers, etc., or mouse over the actual Cool. So that's all to say that there are some events that are tied to specific elements. Like the submit event is tied to a form. The click event, for instance, is universal. You can click on anything. These paragraphs, buttons, anything. Mouse over is probably everywhere as well. You can mouse over anything. But there are some of them that are tied to certain elements, like the submit event, that is only tied to the form. Okay, so let's remove that. Now here, let's console log form is being submitted. Save that. I have a spelling mistake. Now let's do this. Hello. Hit send. And did everyone see, or did anyone see something happening? Let's see it one more time. Who can tell me what's going on? Peter? Yes, but that's how we can fix what's going on. But what's happening?
The page is refreshing as soon as you hit the button. It like does the function immediately refreshes.
Correct. So the page is refreshing immediately after I click the button or I submit this form, and we can see that real quick here in the console. We're going to get the console log that we have in our callback to the item event listener. You all see it? Really fast happens here. So that's a good sign. We have some progress. The function is being called when we hit submit. Michael? Yeah, so that refreshing is because the form is trying to be submitted. And when the form tries to be submitted, it's just trying to send a network request to a server. We don't have a server yet, but that network request is a request that happens when we refresh the page in general. And then it's going to try to submit. I should have put a name in here. Name to do. So let's look at it here. So the question is, why does it refresh? And the answer is because the browser by default will try to submit the form. And remember also, some years back, we didn't have JavaScript in the browser, but there were still forms that you should still be able to send feedback to government authorities or government websites. You were still able to fill out forms in general without any JavaScript. So that's why forms behave this way. So here, let's do buy milk. Once I hit send, note that one, we're going to see the console log popping up here, and the URL here will change as well. Let's see if I can. I'm not sure if this is going to make sense, but let's do this. So, okay, the console log, we know that is going to happen. There is also this network tab. I encourage you all to explore all the options that you have in the developer tools. This network tab is going to be really handy when we start to make network requests to fetch information from other websites or grab information from the servers that we're going to write. Here, this network tab records all the network activity that my website generates. So all the requests that come out to the internet to grab all the information are going to be recorded here. So far, we don't have any, but I'm explaining that the form will be tried. The website will try to submit this form, and in doing so, it will generate a network request trying to go to a server to save that data, right? And it refreshes because at the beginning we didn't have any JavaScript in the browser, and we still wanted to keep track of what the people or your users inputted in a form. So let's try this. Milk send. I click send. And one thing that you note is here my URL changed at the top. The page refresh, and I have these two things popping up in my network tab. The first thing that we see is the request that I was talking about, the server trying to send this information somewhere. You can see that the information is put in the URL. So this is my to-do, and that's the content, boil milk. The spaces get converted to a plus. And then, let's see, I don't see, okay. So this is basically it. This is the sort of proof that the browser is trying to send this information. And it's trying to send it to be saved to this URL. It's just that in this URL we don't have anything yet, therefore it's not saved anywhere. But yeah, that's what's happening basically under the hood. The form is trying to fire a network request to save the information. So what we want to do is prevent that from happening. We don't want the browser to try to send the information, at least not yet, or we want to have more control over that. So let's go back to the console. Let's refresh this again. So we have the form, and it's refreshing the page. It's trying to submit it somewhere. So for preventing that from happening, we have something sort of special for that. But first, what is the argument that gets passed to your callback functions on an event listener? So here, we're adding the event listener, which is going to be this function, to listen for the unsubmit. But add event listener will pass in an argument to your callback, to this. What is that argument called or known for? Douglas? The event. That's correct. So here you get the event. I think I mentioned this in the video. Some people just do E for short, but I like to be more precise and say event. So this event is an event object that contains information about where the event happened, even at what time the event happened, what kind of event it was, etc. So if we do console.log event, because the page is refreshing, we're not going to get to see this. Let's prevent it from refreshing. We do that with event.prevent default. So just to reiterate here, all events have a default behavior, if you will. So the default behavior of the submit event is to try to send the form. Another example is the default behavior on a click in a checkbox is to mark the checkbox. If you do event.prevent default on the click in a checkbox, what you will see is that the checkbox doesn't get selected, basically. Like the check mark doesn't get drawn. So just remember that all events have sort of a default behavior. So with this event.prevent default, we're going to prevent the form from submitting. Douglas, you had a question?
Super quick. If you were targeting, say, that checkbox, would you put prevent default and then in the parentheses checkbox? How would you target it?
Instead of the form, we will have the checkbox.
Oh.
And then, yeah, that's it. Yep. Prevent default doesn't need any argument. So okay, let's go. Let's look at this. Hello, I refresh, and I hit enter to submit the form. So the first is the console log on line 8. Yes, Chuck.
Is there a good website to find out what an event default does where everything's simple?
Say that the last part a little bit louder.
Sorry, is there a good website to find out what event default does where every other?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know, but if you look at event prevent default on the MDN, has some good examples. Here, look at this. Here is actually where I get the checkbox example from. Oh, even here you see it. I'm trying to click on that checkbox, but it says sorry, prevent default won't let you check this because if we look at this code, we are preventing the default on the checkbox. Any other questions? So here we're getting the event. So look at this object. This is the event object. It represents an event. It's just a JavaScript object with a bunch of properties. Look, if it even has the path, which is sort of cool. For those of you that watched the video on bubbling, which you should have, it mentions how the event will bubble up. Right? And then this is the path that the event follows. First, the event gets fired in the form. Then the event bubbles up to the parent of the form, which is the body. And then the event bubbles up to the parent of the body, which is HTML, and so on and so forth. Okay. So we have the event, and we see that we now, once we let's refresh the page. We click hello. Let's open this console. Now I'm sending with enter, and by clicking send, and my page is now not refreshing because I'm preventing the default behavior, which is trying to submit the form. If I go here to my network, do you remember that I showed you that we had something was popping up here because the form was trying to be sent? Let's try now. Nothing pops up. Right? The form is not being sent. At least not yet. We're gonna get to once we send the actual form. Cool. Any questions here so far? Okay, this form is being submitted. Let's move this here. Let's remove the event. And let's pick somebody else. What's the next step that we should follow here?
Voniel.
Vonil. What's the next step on building this to-do app? We are listening for the submit event in the form, which is good. What do we want to do once we hear the submit event?
Create the list item. Grab the owner of this tag, and then create the new element for the list item.
Grab input from the input box. All right, let's do grab user input. Okay, what was the other thing you mentioned?
To get the owner of the list and stuff also.
Grab the list, the URL list. Okay, we have these 3 steps. Create the li item, grab the user input from the input box, then add the user input to the li item, grab the list, and we're gonna get to see there's one step that we're missing here, but let's do that one last. Cool, so let's get on the first one. How can I create an li element? Suzette? The argument is in the tag that I want to create, an li, right? Just like that, or what else should I do here? Set a variable, right? Because if not, then the li will be just thrown in the air. So just do let li or item or to do, whatever you want to call this. I'm going to call it li to do. There's an li that represents a to do. Great. So then the next step is grab the user input from the input box. How do we get whatever the user typed from the input box? Joanne? Yep. Actually, we have this one here to do input. Can we use this one? Okay, so get the input from the input box. So this step sort of gets combined with this one. So basically, we already have the input box, which is this to do input. So how do we add the user input to the li element? What do I mean by that? Who can use more technically accurate language for expressing that? Yes, Brianna?
You can do to do input dot value is equal, well, li to do dot inner text is equal to do input dot value.
Great. Here, we are adding the user input as the inner text of the li to do to be equal to the to do input dot value. So all inputs have a value property where the content of that input gets stored. And here I just want to set the li to do that inner text, right? Whatever is inside the li to be equal to the value that the user typed in the box. Great. Now, sort of the last one is grab the list. We can grab the list by let list equal document dot query selector UL. So, okay, grab the list was the last step. Yes, Suzette? Great, really accurate language. You have to add the list item to the list itself with a pen child, right? So because if we don't do that, then the li item is being created, but it's just left hanging. It never put in the DOM, and we want to put it in the DOM so that the user can see it. So we do wherever we want to append, which is the list, append child, and then what do we want to append? We want to append the li to do. Add item. Cool, let's see what we have with this. Refresh. Let's do by milk. Seems like nothing happened. Oh, there you go. So we're adding elements. Questions here. This is your time. Please ask. So could we have grabbed the list outside of the event listener for the form, like here? You see how here at the top, like the first thing that we do is grab the to-do input. Could we grab the list there as well? So the answer is yes, because we are only using the list. We only need it once, basically, right? We don't need to grab. We're not grabbing. There are no multiple lists. We only have one, and we could just grab it at the top, the same way that we do the to-do input. If you don't, let's see, like. If you only need to grab it once, then only grab it once instead of grabbing the list in the add event listener. So then this changes to add item to list, or more accurately, append item to list. Let's see if this still works. Still works. Questions here so far? Why is my list above my form? Correct. In the HTML, I could just move this to the bottom, save, refresh. So now the list is at the bottom. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's see if we reach our MVP. When the user writes nothing in the form, oh, we are still missing this. So the page doesn't refresh. The new LI is being added to the bottom of the list, which is great. Now we need to take care of the, when the form is empty, we don't want to add anything. Let's look at what we have currently. We are letting the user add empty to-dos. And then they will, if the user can misbehave, they will misbehave. So how could we prevent this from happening? Owen? Where would I put the if statement? When is this happening? Yeah, like when is it that the LI gets added? Right, and then when I click the button, what event I, as the user, am I firing? Yes, correct, the submit. So this is where there's again that question, like when is that happening? That's happening when the user is hitting submit. So that if statement should be in the event listener for the submit event. So here, where would I put the if statement, and what should the if statement ask? Hugo? After the input value, like here?
No, I mean before.
Before, right? If I do it after, it will be. Oh, we could put it after, or like rather like, what is the thing in from these steps that we have here? What is the thing that I have to prevent from happening? Well, not the event, but what's going on here? What do I want to prevent? Even more than that, Douglas. Appending the child, right? So here, what I don't want, this is the line that I don't want to run if the input is empty, right? I don't want to append the child. I could add the value. The value is going to be empty, and I could add it to the li to do, but because the li will never be added, it will never be appended. If I have my if statement, then that will be fine. I'm trying to think about if we do the if statement here, if to do input the value, which is whatever the user typed, if they didn't type anything, then this will be an empty string, right? So I'm just going to see if the input type is not empty, then append the element. Otherwise, don't do anything. So there are multiple ways in which you can ask this question. Is the user type something? Is the input value empty? Or even the opposite, which is, is the input type, is the input value empty? Here I'm asking if it's not empty, then execute this line, list append child. So let's see what we have here. Refresh, empty. I'm hitting enter, I'm hitting clicking. That's never happening. Other questions? Okay, so this if statement is asking if the input value is an empty string, which is if they didn't type anything. No, if they type something, then append the element. Even if they type 1. Or even if they type v, because that's not the empty string. What happens if I do this? I didn't realize this might be an edge case. I'm putting spaces, and then I'm hitting send. So even if I put only one space is not the empty string. So this is sort of an edge case. Let's see, let's go back to our node. Let's see, I want to see the value of a space. Yeah, the value of a space is true. The value of, the Boolean value of an empty string is false, but of a space is true. So there are some ways in which we could account for this edge case. One is strings have a method, I think, called trim, which if you pass in a string to that method will, no, if you call this, let's look at it here. Node. Let's look at this string. this string has 2 spaces at the beginning and 2 spaces at the end. I could do that trim on this string, and it's going to remove the spaces at the beginning and at the end, which is handy because then if we have, so trim just removes spaces from the beginning or the end of the string, and if we only have spaces, what are we going to end up with? The empty string. So using trim will be a way in which we can account for the value not being completely empty with just spaces. This we could do here. Do here trim. So after the input value gets trimmed, if it's not an empty string, then accept it. Let's look at it here again. Let's do empty, nothing. Spaces, still nothing. This is, so this will be accepted. Some spaces. Note that those spaces don't get added here because HTML ignores more than one space. If you have more than one space, it's just going to be ignored. Okay, so we found we completed this one. Oh, actually no, we don't have completed this one. We should display an error message inside a p tag. Oh man, we still have sort of a long way to go. So if they if they try to submit to do that's empty, we should display a p tag that says error, please specify a to do, or the to do cannot be empty. So there are multiple ways in which we could do that. One is adding an empty p tag in here, then grabbing that p tag from the with JavaScript. We could also create this p tag from JavaScript and just add it to the body. A challenge with that will be if we want the p tag to be like in between the form and the UL. If we want to add that with JavaScript, it becomes a little bit more tricky. If we want like to add an element in between other two elements, it is still possible, but we're not going to get into that right now. So for now, the easiest way is add the p tag here, and then I'm going to give it an ID. I'll call it message. So that's the purpose of this p tag is to display an error message. So if I do that, nothing really visually changed in my page. I just have an empty p tag. Now, I want to display that p tag if they try to submit the form with nothing. If they try to submit a form with nothing, I want to add, or I want to change the inner text of that p tag to display the error message. How would I do that? Karen? An else statement, great. Yes. And then what do I do in the else statement? P that inner text cannot be empty. Okay, let's try what we have with this. While milk still works, empty, oops, nothing happens. Oh, actually something is happening. Look at this number. Look at it grow. As I hit enter, I have 21 errors. So we have a bug in our program. Let's go to, let's look at what those errors are saying. Let's open this up. And we have in the console, we're gonna get that. It says, on-cut reference error, P is not defined at HTML form element and to-dos at line 19. To-dos line 19, to-dos JS line 19 is this line. And it's saying P is not defined. So that means that this P, in our program, we never said, okay, P be equal to this, or P is going to be this other thing. So what do I need to do here to fix this? Khadija? Correct. So I will need to do let P equal document. So you were saying document get element by ID. That's still fine. And then pass in the ID, which is message. So remember that you can grab elements from the DOM with get element by ID, query selector, or there's another one, get element by tag name as well. I honestly prefer query selector because of its flexibility that allows me to grab element by all different kinds of selectors. So I'm just gonna do that. So here I have the message. Now let's try to refresh this again. Let's see if P is defined now. By milk still works. Now let's try space. Nice. We have our error showing up. Well, because we went into this else statement, and this else statement grabbed the P tag and set its inner text to be equal to the error message. So if I try to click submit it, and it's something that's empty, we still get the same error. Let's try it like from scratch. Right. So, like this? That is a great idea. Could we remove the error once they add a correct to do? O'Neill? Set the paragraph to, or set the inner text property of the paragraph to an empty string if the input is not empty. Right? So that's a great idea. So for that, what we'll need to do is grab the P tag not inside the else, but rather sort of outside, so that it's able, so that we have it regardless of whether the input is empty or not. Let's see this. Let's move this to here. Add some spacing for readability. Let's see if anything has changed. Empty by milk. Right. The error is not disappearing. So, but we want it to disappear once the user types something correct, which is just a better user experience. If you that would be really confusing if you type something that's not valid, or if you let it empty and then you get this error, and then you're typing something and it still shows you that error. I think a regular user will be really confused if it's trying to fill out a form like that. What we want is remove this error if they type something. So the idea that O'Neill suggested is, if there is something in the input box that is the value of the input box after it has been trimmed is not the empty string, then set the inner text of the P tag to be equal to the empty string. Sort of remove whatever text was there before and put the empty string. Let's see what the result of that is. Hello. We still got that empty. We get the error. Look how, let's do grocery shopping. Then the error disappeared. Yes, Jen.
What about whatever you type in the box?
Whatever I type in last.
Doesn't go away.
Oh, here. This is good. We're improving the user experience, which is something that we always want to do. So the next piece of user experience is, once they submit something, this should get back to empty. Right? That's just better so that we allow them to add a different to-do. It is not very common that you add the same to-do twice, right? So we should let this, we should reset this box to be equal to the empty string again. Oh, that was a bonus? But that's a good user experience bonus. And this will only take us like one line of code. Brianna?
Underneath inner text and then if statement.
Here?
You can do, yeah, right after it would be to do input dot value is equal to empty string.
Here. Nice. We just do to do input that value equal to the empty string. So let's look at this again, refresh. Hello, empty. Why the message goes away. And we also see that once we add another one, the input gets reset to the empty string. That's nice. Cool, what's the last part that we need? But also, any questions here so far? Mm-hmm.
So for the error, you could only put paragraph with if you wanted to tell like an alert instead of a paragraph.
If we wanted to do an alert, in that case, we'll just get rid of this P here. And here we'll do window.alert error. Okay? Let's try this. Error. Error. That's good. That's not an error. Empty. Error. That will be another option. I would say it's more common to have like that p tag showing an error than actually using window.alert. Windows.alert are really annoying. And if you see, like, a good example of that is this. If I log out of here, let me show you sort of like p tag that it's this loads. Or let's do, I don't know, Instagram. I don't think I'm logged in. Oh, I am logged in. Tumblr. Here, if I try to log in here, and I don't specify any email, you see, then this, oops, there was an error, try again. So this is more user-friendly, right? Instead of the alert, this could be a p tag just popping up underneath. Any other questions here? Let's see what else are we missing. When the user clicks on LI item, the item should be crossed out, indicating that the to-do is complete. Okay, let's do that one. So far, I can click on my hello, and nothing really happens, right? So here, what event do I want to listen for? The click, right? Now, where would I... Okay, so I know that I need to add an event listener to the LI. and I know that I want to listen for the click. Where in my code would I do that? Joy? Before you append it. Okay. Like before, maybe here, like even before the if statement. That's one option. Before we append it, or even inside the if statement, those will be two good places to add the event listener. So this is one way that I didn't foresee that we could do it. We are creating the li element, and because we have that li to do here we can just do li to do that add event listener. Even though this li to do is not in the DOM yet, I could still add event listeners to it. And this is also a good place because this is when the li to do gets created, right? So if we create 1,000 to dos, we want all of them to have the event listener as well. So this is a good way. There's just one downside with this, which is all the LIs will have its own event listener, where we could have only one event listener that is shared across.
Yeah, there's
So yes, that will be, let's do it this way, and then after that we get to see how we could take advantage of the bubbling effect that events have in the DOM. And then because an event will bubble up to the parent, what we could do is just listen in the parent, listen in the URL for click, and then we can know exactly where the event happened, what element was the one that was clicked, and take care of that way. So let's try this way first, just to have the contrast. Here I want to add the click, and then the event listener, or the listener function, ES6 anonymous. And then here, what I want to do is cross out the to do. And then I left a hint here. You will need to look at element.style text decoration. So let's look at that. And then here we have these examples. We have document get element by ID, my p tag. So this is, they're grabbing an element by ID. Let's do. And here we have, this is just an example. Get the element by ID, my p. That's this element, this p tag. And then they're saying that p dot style dot text decoration equal the string underline space overline. Let's see what this gives us. Run, and then I click the button, and that adds an underline and an overline. So there are a bunch of different ones. If you go in here, you will see all the property values. So object.style decoration can be none, can be underline, overline, line through, blink, initial, inherit. And here the one that we want is this one, line through, defines a line through text. So even let's change it here. What happens if we do line, has to be line dash through. Let's run this. Let's decorate the text. We get our line through. So this is what we need to do. Use the element.style.text decoration. Cool. So what's our element here? What's the element that we want to decorate with a line through. Li to do dot styles. Is it style? No, just style. Dot text decoration equal line through. So in here, I'm adding an event listener to the li to do. It's going to listen for the click, and it's going to do this on each one. Let's see. Hopefully this works. Oh. Refresh this page. Let's do buy milk. Add that. And then I'm going to click on the li, and we get our line. It's great. Let's try one more time. Then that works. So this is one way. As we create the li to do items, we add an event listener to them even before we add them to the DOM. That's one way. Again, the only downside for this is that if we have 1,000 to-dos, we'll have 1,000 event listeners. And that could start to slow down our pages. So instead of doing this, we can take advantage of the event bubble in effect and have only one event listener that listens in the parent of the elements that we want to listen for. The parent in this case will be the UL. And there's only one event listener that will take advantage of the event bubbling. So let's comment this out with maybe a note. Good, but it could slow the page down. Because each one own event listener. So this is sort of related to when we were looking at classes and we were looking at whether a method in a class will be, or yes, that still applies to classes, but putting an element in the instance versus putting in putting a method in the instance versus putting a method in the prototype. You guys remember that? Like, for instance, the map method on all the arrays is not that all the arrays have the map method. Is that the map method is shared across all the arrays, and there is only one map method that gets shared, that allows to save memory. Here's a very similar example where instead of having all the LIs have its own event listener, we just have one event listener that is shared, and that event listener will live in the parent. Yes, Brianna?
This event listener, I don't know how to explain it. I did something similar at first, but let's say I have 3 items and I click on one, it put a line through the first one. Instead of the one that I clicked on. So I don't know if this one, if it was doing that too.
We'll need to look at that. That's a really interesting case. That's because this li to do here was probably still referring to the first li. And even though you click the second one. So let's look at this, but using, like, having the shared event listener in the parent and still being able to know where or what element we clicked on. So for doing that, because I want to listen in the parent, and because the parent is already there in the HTML markup, which is the UL, I will grab it outside of my form event listener, right? In this case, I want to add this event listener to the UL that is completely independent of whether the form has been submitted or not. That's why I want to do it out here. So first I'm going to grab the UL. Actually, I think I already have it here. List. You see, that's another good reason for sort of having elements that you are going to reuse. Grab them like at the top so that you can share them between your event listeners. In this case, so I have the list at the top. The only thing that I need to do is add an event listener to the list. And I want to listen for the click event. And then then my actual listener function, callback. Here, let's do this one. Console.log, the list was clicked. So note exactly that the form event listener is here. My list event listener is right underneath, not inside. I'm still inside the add event listener for the DOM content loader because I need the DOM to be there for grabbing elements. So let's look at this example. Refresh. Let's open up the developer tools. Go to the console. And let's see. Let's add some to-dos. Now let's click on this element. Nice. The list was clicked. The list was clicked. Let's add one more. Here the list was clicked as well. So that's nice. We are able to click any of the LIs, and because the LIs are inside the UL, by clicking on one LI, you are also clicking in the UL itself. Right? Does that make sense? Okay, but now you have one challenge, which is how do you know what LI do you click? That's sort of a challenge because you know you're clicking the list, so how do you know what LI you clicked? Now, so besides that challenge, we have one more, which is if I click here, I still see, look at this number going up. I'm not clicking in one LI, I'm clicking sort of like in this blank space. So that could be a challenge that we need to look out for. But before we look at that, how could we know exactly what LI we clicked? I mean, that's the key. The event target, the target property of the event object contains information about the event, where it happened, or what time it happened, what kind of event it was, and from those, one that is really important is the event target, which is who was the target of the event, like where exactly, in other words, where exactly did the event happen? What element did the user click? So remember that when to all your event listeners, add event listener passes the event here. You decide to use it or not. In this case, let's do this. Instead of the list was click, or actual like that, do event target. So I want to console log the target of the event. That is, what element was the one that was clicked. Bought milk, groceries, laundry. So we had 3 to-dos. Now note what we're going to see in the console as I click through them. I'm going to click on laundry. The list was clicked, and then after that I'm console logging the event target. So the target, my target for the click was this li element. Look what happens when I click on buy milk. The list was clicked, and now the event target is a different li. The event target now is the li that has buy milk inside. So just remember that in here, in the event target, you get who the target of the event was. Now let's look at what happens if I click here, which is it going to be an li or something else? Let's click outside. The list was clicked, and the target of my click was the list itself. So we may want to watch out for this case where they click on something outside. Questions with the event target? Or with the event bubbling? Also, let's do here. I'm going to do, you all remember the event path that we saw. Let's look at the event path, which is how the event will bubble up. Let's refresh. Now here I'm going to click on laundry, and I see the list was clicked. I get my target. The target of this click was the laundry li, and I see the path or the way in which the event will bubble up is first the click was sort of felt or registered in the li. From there it goes to the parent, which is the ul, which is actually where we're listening for the click event. And from there it goes to the body, HTML, and document ultimately. So again, if this feels confusing, rewatch the video that I recorded on event bubbling. Hopefully that will help clear things out. But here is, if the event has this path, that is to say, the event will move from the li to the ul, from the ul to the body, etc. I could listen on anywhere in this path for the click, and I will see my event listener being fired because the event is indeed bubbling up. So here, this is a better way in which we have one event listener that is going to be shared via its parents. So now let's do the actual line through. So how can we do the line through here? I want to add the line through, but to what element do I want to add the line through text decoration? Karen? To the event.target. Remember that the event target will change depending on where I clicked. Target that style that text decoration equal line through. Let's see now. Refresh. Buy milk. Groceries. Laundry. Now let's click on groceries, and then we get our line through. We click on laundry, we get the line through. We click on buy milk, and we get the line through. All that thanks to the event bubbling and the fact that we have the event target, which is where the event happened, and we're just adding this text decoration property to the style property of that element, and we say that be equal to line through. Questions here? Yes? If I click again, would it remove the text decoration? It wouldn't, right? That'll be another piece of good user experience. They click on it again and it will remove it back. We're not gonna get into that. I just wanted to show you, besides that, this sort of the case that we will need to watch out for here is what happens if I click in here outside in the LI. This is the LI, right? This is the UL itself. The LIs are these little guys on the right. But I'm listening for clicks anywhere in the UL. So if I click in this green at the moment area here, what do you think we're going to see? If I click here, are we going to? There's two options. One, are we going to get all the to-dos crossed out? Or two, we're going to get no to-dos crossed out. Thumbs up if you were the first one. You're going to get all the to-dos crossed out. Okay. And then thumbs down if you're the opposite, which you're not going to get any to-do crossed out. Okay, so we got no one. I didn't see anyone with thumbs down. Let's see. We got all of them crossed out. Because now, what's the event target? If we think about the whole list. And then we just line through everything inside that UL list, which is all the LI elements as well. Questions? Okay, let's take a 7-minute break and then be back for the CSS install. Sorry? No, I'm going to get to do that. Do you have any ideas?
I do it, but it's not funny. Don't care what you're doing.
For a UL, this can be property called tag name. Target, property called building or something like that. That will be explained with the tag. Then based on that, you see if the tag name is the choice is high, then you want to do the same. If the tag name is UL, then you want to do the result goes out all.
But that's, but like, you have the same one I do on there, but like, I can actually
Because that's still part of the list. So if you're referencing
No, technically do that. Do a single.
yes. And what I learned is I want to prevent people from thinking outside, and so then
So you don't want this. Anything to get rid of your thoughts.
I can get rid of Annie. That will work, yeah.
You get rid of the I mean, you can add all this.
Yeah, that will
So
work.
they get rid of that.
You can get rid of those, and then there will not be surface where they can but that will change how the next
I'll just make it the same. Well, actually, can you target places? I guess here I'm targeting the actual. What if I target
one option would be
UL?
yeah, so one option, that's what I was saying, where the elements have a fragment, so you expect if they truly click on the then you might do that. If they click outside, then they click on the URL itself, then higher URL. In that case, I want to undo the word.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I didn't know I do that. I say we're going to get into possible.